when you buy food, you're looking like, okay, how can I get the best food that I want? I want something organic. I want something that's done right. And we wanted to have this kind of software when it comes to password management.
Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Great Things with Great Tech, the podcast highlighting companies doing great things with great technology. My name's Anthony Spiteri, and in this episode, we're talking to a pioneering company in open source password management, ensuring businesses can securely and efficiently handle their sensitive data with their innovative platform. They're redefining the way organizations manage their passwords and credentials. That company is Passbolt. And I'm speaking to founder and CEO, Kevin Muller. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No worries. So just before we dive into the world of passwords and the platform that you guys have created at Passbolt, I just want to say that if you love great things with great tech and would like to feature in future episodes, you can click on the link on the show notes or go to GTwGT.com and register your interest. Just as a reminder, all episodes of GTwGT are available on all good podcasting platforms, the Googles, the Apples, the Spotifys, all hosted and distributed by Spotify Podcasts. And finally, please go to YouTube at GTwGT Podcast, subscribe and follow to get all episodes plus all future episodes. And with that, Kev, let's talk about Passbolt and a company that you're in Luxembourg, number one, which is great. I've never interviewed anyone that's in Luxembourg, so really interesting. We were talking a little bit about the link to that in Malta, my home country. But maybe give a little bit of a background first on yourself, where you came from, and then talk about the lead up to you founding Passbolt.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, nothing was really predicting me in my life to found a company like Passbolt, because I'm a guy who comes from sociology in the first place.
Oh.
So not even cybersecurity, not even IT, but I'm a self-taught person. So even when I was a sociology student, I used to sell ethical hacking services to companies that are based in Europe and also in Luxembourg. So I don't come from Luxembourg. I'm a French guy, but France is very near to Luxembourg, or at least some part of France, the part I come from. And that's how I ended up working with some companies over there. And the story of Passbolt basically did not start in Europe. It started in India. Because after my studies, I got the chance to to do an internship in India. And after this internship, I started my first company, which was a digital agency. And Passbolt was actually born in that digital agency. So initially, we didn't have any commercial ambition, or we were not even planning to make it available as an open source product.
Okay.
We built the first version really to solve our own problematics. And the problem we were having was that we were a technical team managing a big amount of customers. And for each customer we were undertaking, the first thing the customer would do was to send our passwords to us by email. The passwords that our team would need in order to do their job, to connect to the systems, to the social media, but also to the servers through SSH, or to connect to the API. So this was sent to the project manager, who had then to distribute it among the team members. And we had a big security problems because our project managers were doing that by email or by Skype or something else. But to be honest, at the time, I was really more concerned about the productivity issues. The fact that the passwords are changing all the time, you have big volumes of passwords to handle. And in order to fix that, we are using KeePass. But I'm not sure if you're familiar with KeePass.
I was, yeah. It's one that I used back in the day as well. So yeah, very familiar.
So KeePass is amazing. I think KeePass creates a sense of trust with the users because it's open source, it's audited, and it's a very simple app. But the problem of KeePass, it has its limits when it comes to collaboration. So when you're working in a big team, what happens in many cases, and at least that's what we hear from our customers and users, is that you have a KeePass file that becomes really big with initially dozens of passwords and hundreds of passwords. And at some point, what you want to do is just like, okay, how do I share this subset of passwords that are relating to a specific project to a part of my team? And then you can like copy the folder and then create another KeePass archive and then send this archive to the other team using a different channel. But then the problem is like, how do you know where your passwords are going?
Yeah.
you don't
You
have
lose
control.
track, right? Like you've got no way
Yeah,
to track where your passwords are, and you can lose absolute control of the end resting place for them. So they're always vulnerable.
exactly. It becomes a hot mess very quickly. You don't feel in control, and that's the reason that pushed us at the time. So I say at the time, it's we're talking back in 2011, so a long time ago.
Yeah.
And basically, we started looking at password management solution online. We're like, okay, someone must have fixed this problem. And it's true, there were password managers that were available in the market. But the problem is we were a technical team, and we have more sophisticated needs than what the password managers that were available were providing. So typically, what we wanted to do is to be able to share with granularity. Like I want to click on one password, share only this password with one person from my team. And once I've shared it, I want traceability. What happens? I want to be able to see the activity logs. I want to see did this person share it with another person? I want to have offboarding report, like this person is leaving my organization. What is at risk? What password should I rotate? So that was the first part. The second part is, as technical guys, privacy is a real concern for us. So, we were using Drupal, WordPress, Linux systems, and we wanted something that was open source. Like we want to be able to install it on our own server. We want to have control on our data. We want to be able to audit the source code if needed. We want to be able to build on top. So that was the privacy / open source aspect of it. And the first version of Passbolt was really focusing on these two USPs, these two particularities only for us. We developed it. Took 6 months to develop the first version, started using it internally and then with our customers and partners around the company. And the reaction was always the same. People were like, oh my God, where did you get this software? It's been, while we are looking for something similar. And the story was always the same. Very often we would hear, we are using KeePass. We want to transition to something more collaborative. And everyone, as I said, loves KeePass because it's trustworthy, it's been audited. A lot of our French users are fond of it because it's been audited by ANSSI, which
I
is
understand. Yeah.
part of the French government, and it's a big trust stamp. But they're like, okay, we want to be collaborative with it. And once they discovered Passbolt, which was not called Passbolt yet, they got quite enthusiastic. So that's how we understood that, okay, it was not only us, that there was a lot of demand from it. And at that time, I was leading my web agency. Basically, I let my business partner of the time continue with it. And I really wanted to do a product-based type of business.
Yeah.
So I contacted Cedric and Remy, who are longtime friends, childhood friends, cybersecurity guys.
Okay, so they're already in the business. So, and you mentioned you did a little bit of cyber sort of ethical hacking and whatnot before you even got your internship at India, went to India, right? So, I was very curious in that. How did you get into that? Was it because of your friends, or was it?
I think curiosity. At that time, internet was not what it is today.
Yeah.
There was a lot of open doors everywhere. There was a lot of very fishy forums where you can get a lot of information, like Frog Magazine and this type of thing. I think we had this device in France that is called the Minitel. It was the first, it was before the internet. It was our own version of what the internet is, but it was fully proprietary. So basically a Minitel was a kind of computer that you buy from the telecom services, and that gives you access to online chat and a lot of it to porn.
Sort of like American Online, a little bit like how that first sort of internet, it was more like a closed internet where you bought into it and only a certain people that bought into it were part of it. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. So I remember when my dad had bought this, and my first reaction was not to use it, was to wait for my parents to sleep at night in order to dismantle it and understand how it's built.
Yes. Okay.
So I think the way I went into ethical hacking was more like out of curiosity, out of like, okay, how are these people building their systems? Can I dismantle it? Can I find a way in? But in order to understand, how they are like put together.
Yeah, and I think also what you've shared there in terms of the founding, leading up to, when you say you had your friends together and you said you want to start a company, and we're still going to talk about how Passbolt came, but I think again, it's a necessity. Like innovation is a necessity of invention as well, right? So you literally had a need for something to do a little bit more than what KeePass could do inside of
Yeah.
your company, and you focus on collaboration. And I think, you know, we're probably going ahead a little bit, but from the UI that I've seen and that I've played with, you know, with Passbolt, collaboration is built directly into that platform, like nothing I've seen in a password management system. So the fact that, you know, you focus on security, privacy, and collaboration as a platform is very much a unique differentiator for you guys. But maybe just talk a little bit what you were about to get into, which was when you asked your friends about starting a company.
Yeah, so I think I got either lucky or I was good at pitching the idea, but because Remy and Cedric were having a job at the time, and a very nice job, you know, in big companies. So I took a plane, and Cedric was living in Luxembourg, and Remy was living in the Netherlands. And I went to meet them separately, and I was like, look, guys, I'm sure there is something there we should dig, and we are gonna have a lot of fun, you know, because that's what we understand. We are technical guys. We are gonna do privacy, security, and collaboration in a single platform that is open source. I was not fully sure at the time that the platform would remain open source. I was not fully sure of the direction, but basically, once they got convinced, we sat around the table and we had a very open discussion about what it is that we want to build and what values we want this software to have. You know, it's not just a company, because they did not join the project for business reasons. It was not about making money. It was really about building something that has a meaning for us, you know, and something that we really believe in terms of, do people need it? How it should be done? How should the architecture be done? How should the security model be done? I think there was a bit of frustration from all of us, because, you know, the security market has a lot of players, and there are a lot of buzzwords. There are a lot of marketing messages that you know, seem like all over the place, and we were like, no, we want something like transparent. We want something like you know, the organic version. You know, when you buy food, you're looking like, okay, how can I get the best food that I want? I want something organic. I want something that's done right. And we wanted to have this kind of software when it comes to password management.
I think the fact that you've come at it from that angle to start with, and, you know, the founding of the company is based on not just, you know, what you'd call corporate greed or making money or a quick dollar. I think it's very, you know, commendable to the group, right? So, and obviously, you know, going down the open source path as well. Well, what are the challenges there in going open source versus, you know, going commercial from the outset?
So the first thing I have to tell you is that, you know, we've been wrong many times. And, you know, we're in a very comfortable position when we started working on Passbolt, in the sense that we had a bit of cash and we had a lot of time in front of us. And this was a big advantage, because it gave us plenty of time to think the security model, you know, to really work hard on it. And we did the first version, and we are not fully happy with how it was coming together. So we did the second version, we are still not happy. Then we did a third version. Initially, we had projected that it would take us 6 months to come up with the first version, and it took 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
4 years is a really long time in business.
Yeah.
But once again, we didn't know if we would monetize it. It was 3 friends having fun. I'm like summing up a little bit, simplifying a little bit, but 3 friends having fun and really wanting to build something that makes sense.
So during that initial 4 years, did you have any product out there, any betas, any versions, or were you simply just working behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes.
Wow.
Nothing was released yet. We had disconnected we had the first GitHub repository in 2012, but once we decided to build it from scratch again, we removed it. So for 4 years, there was absolutely nothing. And all this takes us in 2016, when we are really proud of what we had built. You know, it was still an MVP stage, not too many features, but we are proud of the security model. It's something really innovative. You know, secret key based, mandatory browser extension in order to make sure that the libraries cannot be tampered with, and that we can store the secret key in a safe way. We put it on a GitHub repository, decided to communicate about it first in a French open source platform called LinuxFR. And this was deliberate, because French people we know them well, of course, we are French. They are very vocal always ready to criticize, you know, like brutal and honest truth. And we knew, okay, we are going to put it there and have the brutal and honest truth. And we got it. But also a lot of really constructive feedback and a lot of users, GitHub stars to start with, which comforted us that we should keep pushing.
Isn't that very interesting that you talk about, you know, the fact that you kind of user accepted, tested it with a culture effectively, as opposed to people, right? But I think from what I obviously know European software developers quite well. I work with a lot of them. And I work with a lot of European customers as well. So I do know the feedback differences that you get from where I live in APJ to America, which is very much, I don't want to say a bad word about anything. And, you know, maybe in APJ, they say a little bit, but they hold back. But I know that in some areas of Europe, they really tell you what you think. So it's probably the best place to kind of test something, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you don't feel good about it, but that's how it is.
Got to fail a lot before you actually do, succeed, I think is the way that you've kind of said it. Hey, talk about, obviously this is it's an interesting sort of question to ask, because obviously there's a lot of, IP, and there's a lot of dangers in going into the nitty gritties of a framework and the way that you actually make your platform work to do the security. But give us a general overview of Passbolt and its capabilities, and how you talked about the private keys and what was important to you guys, but maybe talk a little bit about how you do it differently and why your methodology is not the same as other people out there in the industry.
Yeah, sure. So there are really different USPs and different angles. So the high level is what Passbolt does is security, privacy, and collaboration. So it works differently. So first of all, we wanted an open source platform that can be installed in 1 minute top. apt-get, install, name of the project, Passbolt. Your server gets installed, you send your first invite to your users, and they're onboarded super quickly. That's the first thing. Second thing, we wanted a KeePass-like experience. So most password managers in the market are built for consumers initially. If you look at LastPass, 1Password, for example, they were all built in 2005. And if you look at their UI is really made for consumers in the first place. That's because of their history. That's not because of let's say, a choice that they made later. Yes. Basically, it started in 2005, and then they rolled with it. But with Passbolt, we are like, we don't want to be a consumer product. We want to be a B2B product, and we knew that we had this pain point in the past. We were guys coming from KeePass. We wanted to retrieve the same experience. And KeePass is great at managing a large volume of passwords. So we wanted a solution that can manage a large volume of passwords. And then once you have your passwords in it, you can share them in 2 clicks. But and this is a big differentiator that we have. I would say most password managers, because I don't want to say all of them, there might be some that we don't know, but most password managers in the market only allow you to share an entire vault or a collection. So basically you create a collection or a vault, you put all your passwords in it, and then you'll be like, okay, I'm going to share this collection of passwords with a group of users. But the problem of that is granularity. If you are working with complex projects, complex customers, you'll have a project that will have a DevOps part, that will have like a website part, that will have social media part. You do not want to share all these passwords with all the users.
Yeah.
You will want more segmentation, right? So this is one of our USP. In Passbolt, we have a folder system that really looks like KeePass. You can click on a folder. You can share the first level, the parent folder with a set of users. Then you can restrict the permission in a subfolder, expand it again in a level +2 folder. It's very flexible type of permissions, and it's really interesting from a security standpoint because we only encrypt what we have to. So let's say if I'm sharing a password with you, what's going to happen behind the scenes is that the client will download your public key from Passbolt. It will encrypt one version of the secret only for you, and then send it to the server, and then the server will notify you. So basically, the server knows only your own encrypted version of the secret.
Right, okay.
And this has very interesting attributes because if I remove your access to the secret, then the server will simply wipe it out. It will not be accessible anymore, which is not the case, surprisingly, with many other password managers because they are not able to rotate the it is used for encryption. And it means that once an access is removed, in most of them, the access is actually not removed from a crypto standpoint. And whoever has access to the server will always have access to the passwords that have been encrypted once, even though the access is removed.
Get it. Yeah.
Other properties, such as, once again, most password managers will download an offline copy of the vault from the first connection for usability reasons. But you know, this is very dangerous because this is exactly the same metaphor as you sending your KeePass file containing all your passwords to another user.
Like we talked about earlier, yeah.
So I give you access to the vault. At your first connection, your client will download an entire copy of the vault that you will decrypt. And this means the password manager is just impossible to tell what password you had access to. From a crypto standpoint or from a security standpoint, it means you possibly had access to all the passwords that you downloaded. And all these are things that are unacceptable for us. And these are security particularities that we have implemented in our security model.
Yeah. So you don't have no offline mode, basically, is one of your differentiators.
Yes, that's correct. The server is has the authority to give you access or not to the secrets that you need at a specific moment.
Yeah.
So if you need to access a secret, you basically click on it in the client, or you use the autofill feature. Then a request is made to the server, and the server decide to liberate the corresponding secret or not.
Okay. And you do have Passbolt Clouds that was released in 2019 from memory. So what's that? How does that kind of fit into the picture?
So we developed Passbolt Cloud because some of our customers were complaining that they wanted a cloud version because they started on-prem and then they realized that on-prem is not for them.
Yeah.
So they did not have the resources, the manpower, or the knowledge to do it themselves, but they really trusted the solution. Mm-hmm. So they started asking us if we could host it for them. And once we had like several dozens of them, we decided that it was time to develop a cloud version in order to fix this pain point.
Okay, and is that is obviously guided by exactly the same principles that you talked about with regards to if someone uses the apt-get install Passbolt platform?
Yes, absolutely. And even in terms of privacy, in the sense that the cloud version of Passbolt is hosted in Europe. So, you know, it's under European laws, and which is supposed to be good for privacy. I mean, well, we have laws for privacy, which is already more than
some others. Yes. Some that will remain nameless, but yes.
Absolutely. So yes, same principles, but the only difference is that you do not have access to the hosting. So you do not have control over the hosting, but you have control over everything else. So you can export your passwords. You can even ask for a backup. We'll provide it. So you want to shift from cloud to on-prem, this is completely possible. And the opposite is also true.
Okay, good stuff. I think one of the good things that, I saw a great video on your YouTube channel about the UI and the UX experience, specifically tailored around what you were talking around the ease of use, the sharing, the collaboration, and the different teams. It's almost like the role-based access collaboration built straight into the project, or platform. Sorry, I will link to that in the show notes so people see that video, because I think it's a really good example and a good manifestation of what you've just talked about. And I think one of the cool things that I liked about that video is it had a section where it said real devs don't use UIs. So obviously explain what that is with regards to Passbolt and how you've gone beyond just that. You mentioned the managers that were created in the mid 2000s have that consumer-based UI. So how have you gone about making it dev friendly?
Yeah, so even when we speak to our users and customers, we see a lot of fragmentation in their ecosystem. So sometimes we have people coming to us and they are like, we really want to unify all the solutions we are using, because we are using at for example, one end, 1Password or Bitwarden for the end users. And at the other end, we have our SRE team / DevOps team that is using Vault from HashiCorp, which is a fantastic product, but it's terrible for users that are, non-technical, or I would say even non-server related. So they're like, some of our users need to connect to Vault in order to get some of the secrets, and do something else with it. So we are looking for a solution that can really unify it. And that's exactly what Passbolt does. As a platform, it helps different teams, cross-functional teams, non-tech guys, tech guys, DevOps guys to work together in a single platform. So for the server / DevOps guys, we are providing SDK, we are providing a CLI, We are providing the tools for them to integrate with Passbolt. So we are seeing a lot of really interesting things happening and contributions. Recently, one of our users has developed an Ansible plugin.
Okay,
And
yes.
he did this because he wanted to inject secrets automatically from Ansible in a CI/CD processes. So he did an entire plugin, and since then he's maintaining it. So that's really interesting.
Community. So
And
you've got some community buy-in as well, which is very
yeah,
important.
more and more. It took time to put it in motion, but now the ball is really rolling, and we are seeing interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We had one desktop app also that came up as a community contribution.
Okay.
And it worked with the guys, and now we are pushing it through the finish line. And what makes it interesting is like you can have your DevOps team at one end, who will work like completely without a UI using the CLI or some other automation, but still you will have your reports and your activity logs, your observability, traceability inside the platform, for the users for whom it matters, typically the managers or the power users.
Yeah, and which is great. And I think we talked about this actually in the pre-show where we said a lot of these platforms are glorified spreadsheets. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's clear that from the start, you've decided to work against that notion in this industry, right? And say that, yes, we want to have a password management that is more than just a glorified spreadsheet. So I think that's what really stands out. And again, if you're wanting to see this in action, the video that I post in the show notes is going to give you it in a really easy way. Let's talk a little bit about the FIDO Alliance, because I think that's something that I was reading the blog post about this. So just explain what FIDO is, what the Alliance is, and why it's important for Passbolt to be part of that.
Yes. So you already brought, we talked about the concept of platform. And as a platform, what creates value for our users is the quantity of use cases that we help them manage. And Passbolt is much more than a password manager. It's like a password manager, a secret manager, and obviously it's also leaning towards authentication scenarios. Because once you have all your secrets and your passwords in the platform, what's the next step is like, okay, how do I get my users authenticated without them seeing those passwords? And obviously now, well, the time has come for passkeys, and scenarios where people can connect with their fingerprint or any biometric or any other device. And this is a use case that we hear a lot about from our community, and something we really wanted to embed inside Passbolt. So it's still very early for us, in the sense we just became member of the FIDO Alliance. Of course, we have already a feature that is being developed internally that's going to exploit passkeys and offer like authentication scenarios to our users, but it's still very early. It will take 1 or 2 quarters to have something to show.
Okay.
I would say.
Good stuff. I want to sort of change tack a little bit and pivot to, at the end of last year, there was obviously a fairly major incident where, one of the industry heavyweights got absolutely, I guess nailed really is the best way to say it in terms of a leak, right? So that meant that from December, January, February, it was top of mind. Everyone was thinking about password management. Lots of conversation on the social networks about what password manager are you using? I'm using this. Now let's use that. Obviously, I had Bitwarden on earlier, and what I feel is that we've gone back to a state of people just being almost kind of content with the way that security is again, and it's almost like we need major incidents to be able to make the broader community aware of security, right? So how do you, number one, what do you think about that? And then the second part of that, how do you deal with that as a company? How do you remain front of mind all the time?
For us, it was, I don't want to say it was a good thing that they got hacked, because it's terrible for a lot of people.
Of course.
But for us, it was good in the sense that we have spent years articulating our communication and conversations around security and telling people, our main USP is security. And a lot of people were like, yeah, cool, but you're a password manager, so you have to be secure. And I think when this happened, a lot of people in the industry realized, okay, so it's not because it's a password manager that is secure, It's like I have to do my homework. I need to understand how they are handling their security. I need to understand like how things are actually made. Maybe I should read the white paper of the solutions I'm using. And this is what drastically changed in the conversations we are having with, once again, new customers coming to us, people wanting to leave existing solutions. They're like, you know what? We've realized that the security of the solution we are using is not what we want. You know, they are just too many risks. For example, there are a lot of password managers that are sensitive to brute force type of attacks or phishing type of attacks. And typically right after the hack of our competitor, because, you know, this hack was really terrible in the sense they got access to the vault. They launched a brute force attack on this vault, decrypted a lot of them. And right after that, what they did is target the other password managers through phishing attacks and try to get more of it. And because a lot of them are sensitive to phishing attacks, well, the attack didn't stop there. Yeah, and I lost what I wanted to say. But yes, so basically the impact for us is we are having more in-depth conversations with the people contacting us, and the conversations now are starting much more with the security rather than with the features. You know, security has really become the most important feature in a password manager adoption.
Yeah, I think, and so I kind of parallel that to, if I think about backups, which is, you know, obviously the world that I live in for my day job. And people definitely think of backups mostly traditionally once something had happened, once they needed to access that data, once there was an attack, once something was maliciously deleted, accidental deletion, whatever it is. So I think that's kind of a parallel there. And another parallel is the cloud, right? So if you have cloud-based services, people just assume that those services are always going to be protected and redundant and backed up and whatnot. But the truth is they're not. So there's a lot of education that needs to go into, you know, making sure that all sorts of business enterprises understand the risks that they do when they put, you know, their services in there. And I think passwords are a little bit the same with security. I think that's what those incidents kind of raise. It's like, just because you've got your passwords in a secure vault, does that mean they're actually secure? So I think, like you said, it's generally a good thing. I think it makes the bad guys even more pointy. You know, I think it makes them more sophisticated because, yeah, we talk about, you know, brute force being not super sophisticated. Phishing is not super sophisticated, but it's getting more sophisticated. But I think at the top end of attacks, where they're trying to actually exfiltrate and get passwords through whatever means possible, you have to have these processes in place as a platform to be able to protect against that. And I think more people, more businesses know that, the more risk there is. So do you think that is true? And then number two, where does the ransomware industry sit with the password security industry? Is it one and the same? I just had this thought, because obviously ransomware targets something differently on a system. But when you get hacked or when, you know, you lose passwords, is that part of a ransomware attack, or is it a different type of profile of attack?
No, well, you know, as we always say, password is the smallest common denominator in any type of attack. Most of attacks, including phishing, are targeting passwords. What do you want to get? You as an attacker, you want to get credentials, right?
Yes.
So once you get a credential, then you are gonna try it on many other platforms because, well, you know, most people, they have simple passwords and they always reuse the same everywhere. So that's what a password manager is about. Okay, how, you know, it gives you a good password hygiene in the sense, let's have complex passwords everywhere and let's secure them in a way that will not make it easy for attackers to access them. In the case of Passbolt, so see, there are things we hear a lot and that we are trying to debunk. So for example, some of our customers are coming to us and they're like, guys, why you don't have an offline mode? You know, we really need an offline mode. And they are like, okay, before we tell you what features we have or not, let's have a discussion about the implication, the risk implications of this offline mode. Are you comfortable having your thousands of users having each a local copy, decrypted, you know, offline copy of their entire vault in their local machine? Are you comfortable with this risk? Because then you need only like one of them to have a malicious software installed and being able to read this copy of the vault basically for the attackers to be able to go further.
Yeah, of course. And no one's going to say yes to that.
So once you have this discussion, they are like, well, this is the first time I'm thinking about it, I didn't know. And they're like, yeah, so that's the reason why we are not doing it. This is not because we want you to have a bad experience with the software. It's because we consider that it's a security risk.
Yeah.
And we are a security first solution in the true meaning of the term.
Yeah.
So
education for you is consistently happening with your customers as they come, and that's to round that question in that sort of section. That's why attacks, while they're not great, I was impacted by that big LastPass attack, and even though I had a fairly strong master password that I, to be fair, probably wouldn't have got decrypted for a long time, I would hope. You just never know what sort of computing power is going to be in the future and how quickly they're going to have systems that could do that sort of compute and could actually crack it. So lots of people had to scramble, but I think in that sense, the whole industry woke up, and I think it allowed everyone to be educated. And I think, while it's not good, I think guys like you obviously ended up winning out of it because you had good methodologies from the start, which you've talked about. Just finish off. I'm interested to see where you're going in the future. Obviously you've done some great things. I think we get the why. We understand the value proposition as to why the company was started, what you're doing differently, so how you've innovated in that space. But how are you looking to continually, innovate in this market moving forward?
So I think we could compare a solution like Passbolt to a solution like GitLab, in a different space. Like GitLab started with very simple use cases, like how do I version my files, as a developer, like a simple GitHub. And later on, they added all type of use cases. So it's also connected to your CI/CD. You can also do security assessments, etc. Passbolt is the same. So we have a roadmap that's a bit scary. It is scary. We are scared of our roadmap.
It's kind of open as well, isn't it? I was looking on the website, and you let the community vote on certain features as well, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two roadmaps. We have one that is on our community forum, where people really come and participate in the conversation, give their opinions. This is also where we are promoting the specifications before we start building it. So usually the way it works, we with the team, we'll get the feedback that people are giving us in the forum. Then we'll start on the first version. We'll work on the first version of the specifications, and once we have something that we are okay with, we put it in the community forum for feedback. And we do have a good bunch of people who check these documents, giving comments, and sometimes we discover new use cases. We're like, oh yeah, that's smart. We would never have thought of this if this guy didn't mention it. So we iterate for a while, and once we have specifications that we think are rock solid, we start with the development work. I would say the development work is not what takes the biggest amount of time. It's really like, how do we specify it? How do we make something that makes sense? And as I said, we are a security first company, and any conversation, any feature starts with security. Like, does this feature serve the purpose of keeping our customers and users more secure? So we have the community version of the roadmap that is like a big conversation with a lot of items, hundreds of items. It's going in all directions. And then we have a more polished roadmap that we have on our website, which are like the high-level features that we are going to implement.
Good.
But we usually don't provide deadlines because it backfires. Then you have a surprise.
Absolutely,
in the development
I know very, very much about that. It's ready when it's done. Well, look, I think it's a really good strategy as well. And hey, we're out of time, but it's been a great conversation. Went very quickly. We got through the lots. I think it's a great story in terms of, again, out of necessity, a company was born. 3 friends coming in, making sure that they wanted to create a product that wasn't just for a quick dollar. Thank you very much for being on the show. And just as a final reminder, if you like great things with great tech, would like to feature in future episodes, please go to GTwGT podcast or hit me up at Anthony Spiteri or anthonyspiteri.net. Once again, if you're not subscribed, please go to the podcast station or to YouTube. And with that, thanks to Kevin and thanks to Passbolt. This has been episode 65 of Great Things with Great Tech. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.